Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're embarking on a deeply fascinating, though definitely chilling journey. We are going to peel back the layers of human psychology to explore the absolute darkest corners of the mind. We'll be looking at the physical remnants left behind by history's most notorious individuals, and we're actually going to reverse engineer the psychological void that drives their terrifying behavior. When you work hard to do something right, you don't want to forget it. Now, that was spoken by Ted Bundy. And what makes that quote truly horrifying is the context. You see, he wasn't talking about a career milestone or some great personal achievement. This was his literal justification for keeping his victims' heads as mementos in his apartment. He genuinely viewed his horrific crimes as a form of hard work, and, well, he wanted physical souvenirs to remember them by. And that brings us to a really fundamental question. We know what these individuals take from their crime scenes, right? Jewelry, clothing, sometimes body parts. But what is fundamentally broken inside the mind that makes them take it? What does the clinical architecture of a brain look like when it views a human life simply as an object to be collected? To figure that out, we have to bridge the gap between the physical evidence left behind and the incredibly dark psychology driving it. Section 1. The Macabre Collectors. Now, this isn't just theory. We actually have empirical data from an FBI study that analyzed 480 cases of serial murder just to see exactly what was being taken. And interestingly enough, the highest frequency items aren't always things of massive financial value. Clothing or shoes are taken in 48.5% of cases. Jewelry comes in at 31.7%, and wallets or purses at 23.6%. These are highly personal items. Think about it. A wallet isn't just leather and cash. It contains an ID. It's a permanent symbolic reminder of the victim's identity and the killer's absolute control over their fate. This perfectly illustrates the dark contrast between everyday human behavior and predatory psychology. I mean, think about a normal person collecting coins or maybe vintage baseball cards. We do it for a sense of nostalgia, for social belonging with other collectors, or maybe as a smart financial investment. But trophy taking? No. That is all about reliving the crime. It's about power, it's about bragging rights, and a really grotesque extension of the self. A normal collector just wants to connect with a community, whereas a killer takes an ID card or a piece of clothing to assert total, isolating dominion over another human being. To see how this actually manifests in reality, just consider the case of Erica Elaine Sifrit. She didn't just hide her trophies away in some dark basement. When she was arrested, she was literally wearing her victim's ring on a necklace around her neck, and she was carrying their driver's licenses in her everyday purse. This just highlights how these killers boldly and almost comfortably integrate the gruesome reminders of their crimes right into their daily, mundane lives. It literally provides them with an ongoing, secret thrill. So, seeing this bold, incredibly chilling integration of trophies into everyday life forces us to ask our next big question. What underlying psychological disorder drives this extreme need for sadistic gratification? It's simply not enough to just understand the what of the physical actions. We need to uncover the clinical diagnosis of the why. Section 2. Anatomy of Malignant Narcissism. So, psychoanalyst Otto Kernberg helped popularize a concept that was initially coined by Erich Fromm back in the 1960s. It's called malignant narcissism. This is a severe theoretical personality disorder construct that sits on the extreme end of pathological narcissism. It basically combines standard narcissistic traits with antisocial behavior, paranoia, and most frighteningly of all, egosyntonic sadism. Now, egosyntonic is just a fancy clinical word, meaning their twisted behavior feels perfectly acceptable and totally aligned with who they are. They see absolutely nothing wrong with it. Basically, these individuals take pride in their inherent destructive traits rather than any actual productive achievements. Their grandiosity is built entirely around aggression, requiring absolutely no connection to reality or to other people's well-being. Let's actually zero in on that last part, sadism. This is the derivation of pleasure, gratification, or a massive feeling of absolute power from inflicting emotional or physical pain on others. So the crucial takeaway here is that unlike your everyday run-of-the-mill narcissist who just wants to be admired for their looks or their success, those with malignant narcissism actually admire and idealize their own cruelty. They literally view their aggression and their ability to inflict pain as a source of superiority and ultimate strength. But we do have to make a very careful clinical distinction right here. There is a huge difference between malignant narcissism and true psychopathy. A malignant narcissist is actually still capable of some form of loyalty. They can internalize the moral structures of a powerful group or a gang, and they feel a twisted sense of pride in their aggression. But true psychopathy? That is a total moral void. Psychopaths utterly lack the capacity to internalize any moral framework at all, good or bad. They exist in an absolute emotional and moral vacuum. Which brings us to the deepest, darkest layer of our deep dive today. How is that physically and mentally possible? How can a human being, walking among us, entirely lack the capacity for basic empathy and emotional connection? Section 3, the incapacity to love. Back in 1962, clinical researchers Johns and Quay coined a phrase that has honestly become legendary in the study of psychopathy. They described these individuals as people who know the words but not the music. And honestly, it perfectly captures the essence of the disorder. A psychopath can observe human emotion, they can perfectly mimic human charm to manipulate you, and they know exactly what to say to simulate love or empathy, but they do not feel a single drop of the music. The internal emotional resonance is completely, entirely dead. To truly understand what a psychopath is missing, we first have to define what normal humans experience when they fall in love. Psychologists often refer to the early stage of romantic love as limerence. This is a temporary, hot emotional state. It's that intense, passionate love involving overwhelming longing, euphoria, and extreme physiological arousal. We're talking about the sweaty palms, the butterflies in the stomach, the literal physical rush of falling for someone. Over time, for normal people, that hot limerence transitions into what's called companionate love. This is a much more stable, calm, and warm kind of love. It emphasizes comfort, security, emotional union, and a real long-term attachment and commitment. But what the clinical literature tells us is that psychopaths are biologically and emotionally incapable of forming either of these essential human bonds. They don't get the hot rush of limerence, and they never develop the warm security of companionate love. But why? It's not just a behavioral choice. It's deeply rooted in their biology. What is actually happening inside a psychopath's body that physically prevents them from feeling love? Section 4. The physiology of emptiness. Well, when a normal person experiences love, their autonomic nervous system absolutely lights up. We see a pounding heart, accelerated breathing, sweaty palms, and a flushed face. It is a highly active physiological state. But when subjected to emotional or romantic stimuli, clinical studies show psychopaths exhibit diminished physiological reactivity. They have a distinct lack of autonomic arousal. In fact, their skin conductance, which measures sweat and emotional arousal, essentially flatlines. Their bodies simply do not react to the emotional triggers that light up the rest of humanity. So the crucial point to understand is that this exact lack of physical arousal is what makes them such incredibly effective, fearless predators. Because their heart isn't racing, because they aren't sweating with anxiety or self-doubt, they are completely unfazed. This biological emptiness facilitates an incredibly charming facade. They can deceive, they can seduce, and they can manipulate without any of the nervous biological tells that normal people naturally exhibit when they are lying or doing something wrong. If these individuals are biologically incapable of feeling the music of human emotion, if they entirely lack the racing heart and the warm companionate bond, yet they perfectly know the words to manipulate us, how many are perfectly humming a song they cannot hear right beside you? It's a dark reality to ponder, for sure, but understanding the void is always the first step to recognizing it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep seeking the truth behind the surface.